and welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and it is my 2-year anniversary. For anyone who's wondering, I posted my very first video on December 6th, 2 years ago today, I guess, right? And I thought this would be a good time to sort of do a bigger video, and a video that I've been meaning to do for a long time, which is talk about the cards that are banned in Commander. I made this video in the very early days of my channel. It must have been the first couple months that I had my channel up. And I think it is definitely a video that I needed to remake. There's actually a few videos that I made very early in my channel that I think were very important in the format, that I've sort of started remaking a couple of them because I think, obviously I have way more subscribers and viewers now than I did back then, but they are discussions that sort of are important to have. And I did that video in a very sort of long form, nonchalant, casual way where I just had the list and I just talked about the individual cards in alphabetical order. And that's exactly what I'm going to do again this time. A little bit differently though, rather than just sort of giving my opinion on it. I mean, I am just giving my opinion on it, sure, but I'm going to do it in a little bit of a different way where I have a little more of I'm sort of making a more solid decision on each individual card. My opinions have changed a lot, which is another reason why I'm remaking this video. Obviously, there are different banned and unbanned cards, so that's another reason why I'm making this video, but my opinions have changed a lot over the couple of years that I've had this channel. Somewhat because of the channel and also somewhat because of the direction that Commander has taken in the last couple of years. So I definitely was for banning lots and lots of cards, back before I started my channel. I'm definitely on the other end of the spectrum now, where I am more for unbanning cards than I am for banning them. If we're going to talk about cards, obviously I could get into cards that I think should be banned that aren't currently. I'll throw out a couple, okay? So Necropotence is a card that a lot of people have called to get banned. I would say that it is one of those cards, and again, I'll talk about the categories I'm going to put these cards into. It's one of those cards that I definitely would be okay if it got banned. It's not like I'm out there screaming for it to get banned, though. I'm totally okay with it not being banned as well. There's a couple of cards, though, that for me are just really confusing that they were never banned. Like Sarah Ascendant, for example, is a card that when I first started playing this format, I couldn't believe that card was legal in the format. Here's a card that for 1 mana, turn 1, I can play it, and it's a 6/6 flying lifelink creature. That, for me, when you're first creating the format, that seems like an obvious choice for something to ban. It's kind of weird for me that no one's ever called for it to get banned. I'm not calling it for it to get banned. I just, for me, I'm looking at that card and I'm thinking, why have this never been banned in the format? It seems like an obvious choice, right? The other card, and I will get into this a lot as I talk about these individual cards, Kiki Jiki is the most combo crazy card maybe ever printed. I mean, maybe with a few exceptions, but it's right up there for sure. That's another card that I'm actually shocked that people have never called for it to be banned. And again, it's a commander, so you can have it in the command zone. So, again, I'm not calling for it to get banned necessarily. It's just one of those cards. Like a lot of the cards I'll talk about on this list, people are like, oh, well, you can do this with it, or you can combo with this, or you can, okay, but Kiki Jiki combos with like 30 different cards to just straight up win you the game. And I never hear for people calling for that card to get banned. Why not? I don't know. It's kind of weird. So it's just weird when, and I will give these examples as I go, I'm sure. How people will say, oh, this card has to get banned because it combos with this card to do this specific thing, when you have Kiki Jiki that, you can infinitely win a game with in a million different ways, and so many other cards as well, right? So as I go through this list, I'm going to have basically put these all into 3 categories. Category number 1 is absolutely this card should be banned. And honestly, I don't think anyone would argue with that. There's a few cards on this list for sure that I can think of off the top of my head that, I haven't really looked at the list that much. Obviously, I do know most of the cards that are banned in the format already. These cards just absolutely need to be banned. There's no question about it, all right? That's category number 1. Category number 2 are cards that, I'm going to call it, I could go either way on it. Basically, they're cards that I think we probably could unban, but I'm not going to cry about them being banned. I'm okay with them being banned. I get it. But at the same time, I'm totally okay with unbanning them. And category number 3 are cards that I absolutely think that we should unban. And I'm really confused about why they're banned at all. You know, it's some of these cards are sort of holdovers from a bygone era. So, but we'll see as we get to them. And again, just going through this in alphabetical order, so let's get started. So we're going to start out with Ancestral Recall. Obviously, an incredibly busted, super powerful card. Goes back to the bygone era of, you know, obviously when you're first starting out this game, Richard Garfield didn't realize how, you know, maybe drawing cards is a lot more powerful than it might seem. It's obviously a super busted card. For me, this is category number 2. That's right. And I'm going to start off with some really hot takes here. I would be totally okay if they unban this card. I get why it's banned. It's really, really powerful. But Ancestral Recall is not going to win any Commander games, guys. It's just a draw spell. That's it. It just draws 3 cards, right? Sure, it's cheap. It is sort of broken in the aspect of how much it costs. But what it's doing isn't broken. It just draws 3 cards. Lots of cards in the Commander format that draw 3 cards, right? I mean, you know, you sort of have to pull when you're looking at these cards, you really have to pull yourself out of the history of how powerful they are and also how good they are in other formats. Ancestral Recall is absurdly busted in like Modern or Legacy. In Commander, if my opponent, I mean, let's say even turn 1, puts down an island and then draws 3 cards, I'm like, okay. And then what? You know, they're probably going to discard the hand size on their end step. And again, I know I'm already reading the comments in my head. I know people are going to say, no, they're not going to discard the hand size. They're going to put a Mox Diamond in play and a Mana Crypt and a Soul Ring and a da-da-da-da. Okay, but now are we playing casual Commander? Right? Like, what are we doing here? I've talked about on my channel since the very beginning that I think the format should be separated, CEDH and casual Commander. I'm not going to, you know, hammer on it too much here, but it's called something different for a reason. It's called CEDH for why does it have a different name? For all the people that don't think that's a good idea to separate those into 2 different formats, why does it have a different name at all? Why have a different, you have a different name so you can refer to it because it is a different thing. It's something completely different. That's why we have a different name for it. Just saying. So this is a weird situation where, I mean, I get it. It totally could be banned. That's why I'm putting it in category number 2. But this is a situation where I would probably ban it in CEDH. I would be okay with it in casual Commander. Yeah, that's just me. Moving on. Balance. And, you know, I made a video a long time ago again about what white does best because people always like to hammer on how white's the worst color in the format. I think that is definitely not the case anymore. And the argument that I made is a lot of the really powerful effects that white has, like balance, are banned in the format. In fact, there's a bunch of really powerful white cards on this ban list. One of the reasons, you know, I'm not going to say that why white isn't very good in the format. I think it's fine. Just that a lot of these cards are banned for what white does really, really well. And a lot of the other cards, like Balancing Act, which is essentially the same card but only cost a couple more mana, people just don't like using those cards, right? So balance is, for me, category 2. I would totally be okay with unbanning. I wouldn't totally be okay. I understand why it's banned. I get it. Just for me, you know, if I cast this on turn 2 or even turn 1, what's it going to do? It's not going to do much, right? Each player chooses a number of lands. Like, everyone controls 1 land or maybe 2. And then you're going to sacrifice creatures the same way, which probably nobody has any, so that's not going to do anything. And then you're going to discard cards the same way, and everyone's probably got the same amount of cards in their hand. Again, we can get into the very fringe scenario where I've cast Mox Diamond, Mana Crypt, on my first turn, and then I cast a balance. Okay, again, I don't think we're playing casual Commander again. I'm not going to keep going back to the same point. If they unban balance, this is all I'm saying. I totally understand why it's banned. If they unbanned it, I would be okay with it. Next up, we got Biorhythm. And again, I'll also point out, I'm not going to read all these cards or this video is going to take forever. You know, if you are following along with your own ban list here, I'll put the cards up so you guys can see them. Biorhythm is one that for sure for me falls into category number 3. I have no idea why it's banned. It's an 8 mana spell. And even if you have the scenario where you can win the game with this, it is an 8 mana spell that also requires you to jump through some other hoops in order for you to win the game. I think the reason why they don't like this card in the format, right, each player's life total becomes the number of creatures they control, is because it can sort of just it can just speed the game up really quick. Even if you're not trying to win the game with this card, what you can do is just cast this, even if everyone only has 4 creatures in play, and all of a sudden everyone's life total becomes 4, let's say. So it's not giving you an advantage, it's just incredibly speeding the game up really fast, which maybe isn't super fun. I don't think it's a super fun card. I definitely don't think it should be banned, though. This is probably right at the top of the list for me for cards where I'm like, why would they ban this? Like, they just unbanned Worldfire last year? That's a fun card? Like, huh? That's another card where it's like, okay, really expensive, gonna probably ruin the game for a lot of people, and it's not gonna be a lot of fun. They unbanned that, but not this. Very weird. Next up, we got Black Lotus. And again, just like Ancestral Recall, huge hot take here for me. I would unban this. Absolutely. I mean, again, this is a Category 2. I should clarify. Category 2, which means I totally understand why it's banned, but I would be totally okay with them unbanning it. I've talked at length on my channel about mana positive mana rocks and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Black Lotus is not even a mana positive mana rock. It's a ritual effect. That's really all it is, right? You play it. I mean, of course, it's a little bit different because you can recycle it because it's a permanent. You can get into some recycling combos. Okay, but now, again, we're in the same situation where I have my Oryx Salvagers or whatever, and a Black Lotus, and now I can just create infinite mana. Great. There's like 50 combos in the format that create infinite mana, so who cares? That's not an argument to ban something, right? Again, and I will come back to this a few times. If the argument is someone can just combo off and win, there is 1,000 2-card combos in the format that just win you the game already. So that's not a good argument to ban something. Is this easier than doing one of those other ones, Pillow Pal and Grand Architect or something? I don't know, maybe. But what's the difference? There's no difference for me. If this is, I'm going to use this to enable getting my combo out a lot faster so I can win the game a lot faster. Again, now I'm in a situation where you're not playing Casual Commander anymore. So maybe this card should be banned in CEDH and not in Casual Commander. I'm making it a little more complicated here. I'm just making a case for why I would be okay with this being unbanned. We have Jeweled Lotus. Jeweled Lotus is literally the same thing, even though it can just be used for your commander. But now I can get my 4-mana commander out on turn 1 with my Jeweled Lotus very easily. That you're probably going to do the same thing with your Black Lotus. I'll just say I put Jeweled Lotus in my... I had never actually used that card before, but I put it in my AO deck, which I have on my channel. You guys can look at that if you're wondering what's going on there. That card is busted in my AO deck. I only put it in there because, I do want to get my commander out really fast, and obviously I don't care if it dies, but also it's a 0-mana mana rock, and that's what I'm doing in that deck. It's absurdly busted in that deck because, of course, I can just keep getting it back into the graveyard with various effects that I have in there because it's an artifact deck. It's essentially, Black Lotus, not that big of a difference. If I replaced Jeweled Lotus in that deck with Black Lotus, not that big of a difference because I use my Jeweled Lotus to cast my commander over and over again so that I can recycle his ability over and over again. So, and I'm sure a lot of people would say the same, where I think there's a lot of people out there that have Jeweled Lotus in their commander deck that if they swapped out Black Lotus, probably wouldn't make a big difference because they're only using it for their commander anyway. I totally understand why it gets banned. I got it. Arguably the most powerful card in the history of the game. Maybe, you could. It is only adding mana, though, right, guys? Again, Black Lotus doesn't end the game on its own. It doesn't end the game. All it does is add 3 mana. It's a ritual effect, right? So, yeah, you can get into some crazy combos and all that stuff, but at the end of the game, I would much rather see my opponent cast a Black Lotus than cast an Expropriate. That's just me. Braids, Cabal, Minion. Yes. And of course, this is a commander. They used to, for those who don't know, have banned as commander and banned in the 99 separately. So I think maybe Braids was only banned as a commander. And then maybe you could still play it in the 99. I would be okay with them bringing back that rule, if we're getting into that. Braids, they have the new Braids now, which is sort of the fixed version, and I think that's one of the reasons why they made that new Braids. The new Braids is, I would say, a more fair, fun version. Braids Cabal Minion certainly is not super fun, mostly because of the land thing, right? It is a symmetrical effect, though, and it is really easy to shut your opponent down. If your opponent builds their Braids... By the way, I should point out this is a Category 2 again, where I get why it's banned, but I would totally be okay with it being unbanned. Your opponent, I mean, guys, remember the format we're playing here, okay? I sit down at a table, and I'm going to get back to this with a couple other commanders that are banned. I sit down at a table. I know my opponent is playing Braids, Cabal, Minion. So I have a swords in my hand. What am I going to save it for? I wonder, right? I'm just going to wait till my opponent plays their Braids, and then I'll swords it before my turn, so I don't have to sacrifice anything. I don't know. I just put more removal in your deck. That's all I have to say to people. I say it all the time. All these cards that people have such a massive issue with, put more removal in your deck. Instant speed removal. That's the answer. Removal wins games. I would totally be okay with my opponent playing a Braids, Cabal, Minion. Channel. Yeah, Channel is definitely a number one category where it's obvious why it's banned, and it absolutely should be. I don't think there's anyone that would argue that. It's banned in pretty much every format. I don't know if it's playable anywhere, which is kind of weird that they reprint it because it isn't played anywhere. It is, sort of an iconic card, weirdly enough. It really is sort of like the first combo ever, like Channel Fireball, right? Was sort of the first quote unquote combo ever. I don't know if it was the first time they ever banned a card, but right up there with becoming, like, it was one of the first cards ever banned because they realized the mistake that they had made, of course, and it's obvious that should be banned in the format. Chaos Orb, another category one that it is obvious why it should be banned. Just a silly, funny, weird card with and I'm putting the new one up here from the 30th anniversary edition so you can see the revised text, and it's kind of neat seeing the revised text there. Again, sort of a bygone era of how things used to get played. I would say there's probably people out there that would be okay with this in a commander game because it's sort of doing that, like, it's almost like an uncard where it's doing that goofy thing. I'll skip ahead here to Falling Star, which is essentially doing a very similar thing, right? Flip Falling Star, like, it's the less popular one, so I'll read it. Flip Falling Star onto the playing area from a height of at least 1 foot. Falling Star deals 3 damage to each creature it lands on. Tap all creatures dealt damage by Falling Star. If Falling Star doesn't turn completely over at least once during the flip, it has no effect. So again, it feels like an uncard, right? Falling Star, Chaos Orb, both banned in the format for obvious reasons, banned in everything for obvious reasons. I'm pretty sure there's no format you can play them in. They'd be fun cards in an ungame. If you're playing an ungame with all these uncards, Falling Star and Chaos Orb, I think, would be a neat includes there because those cards are doing a very similar effect to that, but obviously they just don't fit with the game of Magic in general, never mind just Commander, right? So obviously should be banned. Coalition Victory is definitely a category number 3 where, yeah, it's, why is this banned? Again, this is very similar to Biorhythm where, I mean, I get it. You cast a spell, you win the game. Still, though, this is really expensive, right? It's 3 in Wooburg, so it's 8 mana. You win the game if you control a land of each basic land type, which I guess is not that difficult now because you can have a Dryad of Elysian Grove or something that gives you all those land types. And then a creature of each color, which again isn't that difficult. Your commander can just be a 5-color creature, which is good enough for this. So yeah, but I guess it's not fun, but I don't know. There's lots, again, Expropriate and all these cards, Aetherflux Reservoir, that I just get shot in the face for 50 damage. How's that fun, right? It's not. There's lots of really unfun win conditions in the format that people can use. So I don't know. Maybe this is more of a category 2 than a category 3 because I guess I kind of get why it's banned because it is a super unfun way to win, sort of, and it is not super hard to do. So maybe I would bump that to a category 2 where I kind of get why it's banned, but I would be okay with it being unbanned. Emrakul the Ion's Torn. This is, for me, okay, and this is coming from, I hate this card. Okay, I hate Emrakul. I hate I win cards, right? So cards that you just, as soon as you have enough mana, you pretty much just win the game. That's it. They started doing this a while ago. I hate that they started doing it. Omniscience is another card that I absolutely loathe that card. Any card that is just, it's such a ridiculously powerful card that you pretty much just win the game as soon as you can get enough, as soon as you resolve it, you win the game. I hate cards like that. I don't like that they ever started printing them. So I hate Emrakul on its face as an actual Magic card. I would be okay with it being unbanned in the format, though. Just to give you guys an idea, like, I'm trying to be objective here. This isn't just my personal, like, I hate this card, so I want it banned. I'm not doing that at all here. I Can't stand Emrakul, the Ion's Torn. Again, we get into the situation where this is Commander. So if my opponent sits down at a table with their Emrakul, the Ion's Torn deck, I know they're playing it. And every single time they play a Mana Rock, I'm probably going to destroy it so they can never get their Commander out, right? I'm just going to sit there the whole game, like the Thran Dynamo or whatever, right? Because that's what they're going to be doing. They're in a colorless deck. The only way they're going to get their Commander out is by playing a bunch of Mana Rocks, which everybody does with their big Eldrazi decks. And that's what I always do. When I play, I hate all of those Eldrazi. I hate them all. Right? Kozilek, all of them. So anytime I play against those decks, I'm just, Thran Dynamo, zap, I'll zap that, and I just make it so that they never get their Commander out. And I would do the same here. What's the difference? For me, there's no difference. Obviously, Emrakul is going to end the game a lot quicker and easier. Still, though, it's like, yeah, I mean, in a Commander game, you see this card get played in Legacy, and it absolutely ends the game because of the Annihilator 6, which is going to make your opponent pretty much sacrifice everything they have. Annihilator 6 on turn like 12 in a casual Commander game, not that good, man. You could probably have, maybe you got 12 lands and you could easily sacrifice 3 or 4 and it won't even hurt you that bad. It's not even that bad, to be quite honest. And then on your turn, you just cast, 15 damage. Again, in a Legacy game, that's almost probably going to pretty much kill your opponent. In a Commander game, it doesn't. You still got lots of life left. So, they're jumping through all these hoops. I mean, I understand they get the extra turn, but they're jumping through all these hoops to try to get their Commander out just so they can use it once, and then what, right? So, I would totally be okay with this. I mean, I understand why it's banned. It's super unfun to play against this deck, and I would argue that the person playing this deck is not going to have a lot of fun either, because nobody's going to want them to play their Commander, right? Everyone's going to be destroying all their Mana Rocks so they can never get it out, as they should. So, again, this is a perfect Category 2 card for me because it is a card that I understand why it's banned, because I can't stand this card, but I would totally be okay with it being unbanned because I think we know the scenario that will play out if someone sits down at a table with this deck. All right, Arayo, Sortami Ascendant, another Commander that you can have in the command zone. And for obvious reasons, the reason, this is not banned for the front side, I guess the flip side, whatever you want to call it, it's banned for the other side, which of course is counter the first spell played by each of your opponents each turn. So, I could call this a Category 2, but I'm going to call it a Category 3. I don't think this card should be banned at all. First of all, there are already cards in the format that do an effect like this. Obviously, we have the Cataxius, which is doing an effect like this. That is a Commander. Obviously, this one's a lot cheaper. You can get it a lot easier, but you got to flip it, and that's not that easy. And, when I talked about this in the original banned video, or maybe I talked about it in my video about cards to unban, I can't remember which. For me, I'm thinking, okay, my opponent has set their entire deck up to get their Arayo out quickly and then, cast a bunch of, I guess, 0 mana things to try to flip it right away. Okay, but now your hand is empty. And you're sitting there with a flipped Arayo and you have no cards in hand or maybe 1 or 2 cards in hand. Now what? How do you win the game, right? You still got to win the game, right? And a lot of people say, first of all, that sounds like a very not casual play. Again, if I'm just going to cast a bunch of Mana Crypts and whatever, that doesn't seem very casual. But even at that, first of all, I can cast any spell that is uncounterable. Any uncounterable spell gets through this Arayo, right? Gets through Arayo's essence. Secondly, you just I'll cast my own Mana Rock. It gets countered, and then I cast my removal spell, right? And now my opponent has jumped through all of those hoops. Sort of like the Braids situation where they've just put all their eggs in one basket. Now I've got their Arayo off the table, and now what? Now they're just sitting there doing nothing. They're like, how long is it going to take them to set that whole scenario up again? Probably a long, long time, maybe the rest of the game. We're also, again, in the situation where your opponent has this in command zone and you know it, so you're going to be ready for it, right? Again, we're in that situation as well. A lot of people in the comments of that other video had said, oh, well, they'll just cast an Arcane Laboratory so that you can't cast anything, right? You can only cast 1 spell per turn and then it gets countered. And I'm like, okay, that's 1 card in your deck. Like, are you looking at all the hoops that need to be jumped through here? Not only do I have to get my Commander out, cast a 4 spell on the turn, flip it, but then I have to somehow get my Arcane Laboratory in a mono blue deck, which doesn't have any tutors for enchantments. I guess you could transmute. That's the only way you can get your hands on it. It would be really hard. It's one card in the 99. I don't know. Maybe there's maybe one other effect in mono blue that does this. Get that and then cast that before my opponents get, like, there is so many hoops you're jumping through to make this work. Honestly, if you pulled that off, congratulations, you win. Let's scoop and play another game, because that is, man, that's like incredibly long odds to actually make that happen, I think. With the amount of removal I play in my decks, good luck trying to make that happen, right? Is it possible? Sure, but how often is that going to happen? And what are you doing in your deck other than that? That's your whole deck is that. I'm going to try to get Arayo out, flip it, and then Arcane Laboratory. Like, you know, so if it disrupt your plans, first of all, as I said already, people just don't play enough removal, okay, or interaction, let's call it. Counter spells would work great here as well. So you don't take into consideration, like, I can do all these things and then end the game. Okay, but all I have to do, like, one little disruption here and it's all over. A stifle effect even, right? This is a triggered ability. All I have to do is stifle it and your Arayo doesn't flip. So, yeah, I mean, this is a 3 for me for sure. I would totally be okay with unbanning this. All right, moving on to Fast Bond. This is a category 1. Obviously, I don't know if anyone would argue it. Being able to play any amount of lands every turn. Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing else that needs to be said. A tattoo of a deck would just, like, it would be hard to lose a game, right? It would be bonkers. Absolutely. It just, being able to play any amount of lands each turn, it enables so many ridiculous, insane scenarios. Moving on. Flash is a really interesting one. This is maybe the only card that is banned because of CEDH. CEDH players called for this card to get banned. Newer Commander players probably have never even seen this card before. This is because of the Flash Protean Hulk combo. So again, very weird, because this card is only banned because of Protean Hulk, not really banned for any other reason. And I've said this a few times on my channel, in a casual Commander game, I'm like, how are you not okay with this? For me, this is absolutely a category 3 where I would unban it, only because CEDH players want it banned, right? All that happened I'm not a CEDH expert, but I do watch it and I did play it for a while. All that happened when Flash got banned, and Protean Hulk Flash was the #1 win con in that format. All that happened is Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation came in, and that became and now everybody's doing that. That's just how CEDH works, where whatever the easiest way to quickly win a game is, people are going to gravitate towards that. So now you just have everyone doing that now. So I don't know how that solved anything. For me, I don't know why this is banned at all. Protean Hulk was banned for a long time. For those who don't know, they actually had Protean Hulk banned, and Flash was not banned. And then they flipped it over. They flip-flopped it. I guess Protean Hulk is just a more fun, usable card in a casual Commander game. Maybe that's why. But either way, those two cards were banned conversely because of that one combo, and that's it. And again, that's not even Flash Protean Hulk is not the combo. It's Flash Protean Hulk. Then I got to go get a bunch of creatures that then win me the game. And I think even Thassa's Oracle was one of the creatures that you were getting. Like, it was just there's a lot of pieces involved there. I'm actually really surprised that CEDH players called for this to get banned. It absolutely should be unbanned in casual Commander, I think. Moving on, Gifts Ungiven, another card that I've talked about quite a bit. I just talked about this in, my casual or not video that I just did. I love this card. I think this is one of the greatest Magic cards ever printed, not because of the power level or anything, but because of what it's specifically doing. I love the interaction between the players with this card, right? Sort of the mind games, everything that's involved, where I'm looking through my deck for cards, and as I'm looking through my deck for cards, I have to think about what my opponent's going to pick. Then I give them the cards, and they have to think about what cards do I want and what cards do I maybe want in my graveyard. There's so much going on there. That's what I love about this card. It certainly is powerful, no question. And when I call for it to, this was the card this was the 10 cards I want to unban video. This by far, of all the cards I talked about unbanning, this by far was the one that people had the most issue with unbanning. And I was shocked by that. And a lot of people said, you can just go get that 4-card combo and whatever. And I'm like, okay, but are we playing casual Commander now? Again, we're back into that discussion. If I'm playing a casual Commander game, I'm not going to do that. You're not going to go tutor for your combo pieces and win because now you're playing CEDH. And again, I'm not a CEDH expert, but why would CEDH players have a problem with this? Do CEDH players have a problem with Gifts Ungiven being legal in the format? That's what a lot of those decks are doing anyway. I'm just going to, go tutor for the combo piece that I'm going to win the game with. So, yeah, I don't know. The specific scenario that I get people give me issue with this card is people will just tutor for their combo and win. Okay, are we playing Casual Commander or not? Right? With all of these cards, ask yourself, are you playing Casual Commander now or are you playing CEDH? Which is it? Golos, Tireless Pilgrim, and I think I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here because, of course, it got banned a year ago. It was a big deal. It was the #1 commander in the entire format, and I am okay with this getting banned. It is, I would say this is a category 2 where I'm okay with it being, I guess I am okay with it being unbanned, but I'm definitely okay with it being banned. I was certainly happy with it being banned. It's just too easy. I'm not going to go in too much into it, all right? It just makes it too easy to do almost everything in a 5-color deck, right? Every other 5-color commander even took a huge hit when Golos came out because there was no reason to play those other ones as much. It just goes against the mentality of the format in general. The idea of having a colorless commander that's also a 5-color commander, it can literally be the commander for any deck. I made a video about this. I'll put the link up there so you guys can go watch that about my thoughts about this because I made a whole video about it. In fact, I made a couple of videos about it. I made a video about how I liked Golos was getting banned. I got so much pushback on that I ended up making another video a week later about why do we ban cards at all? Why do cards get banned in any format? And you can also go click on the link for that video and watch all my thoughts on the whole thing. Whenever you make video about, whenever I make videos about banning cards or unbanning cards, that's always going to be the most controversial ones, without a doubt. People get fired up about this stuff. I know there's a lot of people out there that had Golos, Tireless Pilgrims decks, and they were obviously not very happy when it got banned. The same goes for all the people out there that had Braids, Cabal, Minion decks, or Kokosho. Kokosho used to be a banned commander, by the way. And whenever, for all the people out there that are like, you can't unban that card, oh, it's going to warp the format, because I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of those comments. Kokosho was a card that got unbanned and nobody cared. Nobody did nothing. It's almost like that card got banned because everyone was calling for it to get banned. When it got unbanned, nobody cared. I hardly never see that card. Hardly nobody plays Kokosho decks. Protean Hulk, again, was another one that was format warping. And when it got unbanned, nobody cared. Nobody uses that card. What's another one? Painter's Servant. Painter's Servant was another card that was just, there's so much combo potential and you can do all these busted things with it. And when it got unbanned, I actually had a guy comment on my videos. He's like, that card got unbanned? He didn't even know. He thought it was still banned. For all the people that think these cards are so format warping, these cards get unbanned and nobody even cares. No, the format has changed a lot, guys. Okay, so moving forward with this list, because I know there's going to be some ones that people are really going to be not very happy about my opinion about. Keep in mind how much the format has changed since some of these cards were banned. Okay, moving on. Griselbrand. Yeah, seeing how bonkers that this card is in Legacy, like I watch Legacy a lot. I don't know why, but for some reason I like watching Legacy games. I'm not sure what the reason is for that. This card's just so bananas. Just being able to pay 7 life to draw 7 cards is really, really stupid. This card probably should have never been printed. I don't know what they were thinking with this card. There's a lot of cards that I think they should have, what were they thinking? Again, Omniscience is another card that I'm like, why did they ever print that card? That's so silly. I don't know what they were thinking here. I guess this would probably be the one commander where I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. Would I be okay with them unbanning it? Again, we're in a situation now where your opponents know you have it. You have a Griselbrand in the command zone. Everyone knows you have it. The thing is, even if they have the removal ready, you get it. Like a counter spell would work here, but even if you have your removal ready, as soon as they play it, they can immediately pay 7 life, draw 7 cards, and then when you kill it, they can respawn and draw 7 more cards. So yeah, I guess I get why this is banned. Sure. Hull Breacher, and I just did my Dimir Staples video. I don't know if I've posted it yet, but of course in that video I talked about Notion Thief, which has been a Dimir commander staple forever. And when everybody was losing their minds over Hull Breacher and calling for it to get banned, I just thought, how come no one ever calls? Again, it's sort of like the Kiki Jiki thing, where I'm like, you want these cards to get banned because they combo with X, but nobody cares about Kiki Jiki with which combos with like 1,000 different things. Everyone wants Hull Breacher banned, but they don't care about Notion Thief. Like I don't think I've ever heard anyone call for Notion Thief to get banned. Now the fact that Hull Breacher is 3 mana and only monocolored, I guess makes it obviously more ubiquitous. You can it's a little quicker to get out. It's a little easier to use. You can put it in more decks. It's not fun. I get it. It's not super fun. I would say this is category 2 for me, for sure. Where I get that it's banned. I get it. It's not a fun card. It's not fun to discard your whole hand. And then, you know, and again, I would argue whether or not that's even casual. But I totally understand that it's not fun. If they unbanned it, I would be totally okay with it. And again, I'm going to skip ahead here and talk about Leofold Emissary of Trest, which, again, is a category 2 for me. I totally get why it's banned. It's super unfun. But again, we're in the same situation where that's your commander now. Everyone knows you have it. I got my removal spell ready to go. So my opponent casts Leovold, and you're not in red here, so you don't have a bunch of wheel effects. You got Windfall, maybe a couple others. You don't have that many. So I guess they're trying to set up that big play. I mean, obviously, your opponent's going to only draw 1 card a turn is just good in general. Sure, absolutely it is. But if they're trying to set up that big Windfall play, I got my removal ready to go, guys. Like, I know my opponent has Leovold in the command zone. Everyone's going to be hating on them. Everyone's going to be targeting them. Everyone's going to be attacking them. And I'm going to have my swords or my Path to Exile ready to go for as soon as they play their commander. They cast the Windfall, and I respond by killing their commander. And they don't accomplish anything, right? And then on top of that, they're probably the arch enemy for the rest of the game because of that, right? So, you know, there's just lots of commanders out there already that I don't want to see across the table from me. So this is just another one. I don't want to. I don't want to see a Leovold across the table from me in a commander game. Absolutely not. But I would be okay with this being unbanned. This is a category 2 for me. Moving on. This is going to be a very long video, so I got to speed it up a little bit. So Iona, Shield of Emeria. Again, I totally get why this is banned. It's a super unfun card. Super unfun. The most unfun part of this card, and by the way, this is why Painter Servant was unbanned. Again, we're in a situation now where Painter Servant was banned mostly because of Iona. And again, I'm thinking, okay, that's a 2-card combo that's really expensive because Iona costs 9, likely going to win you the game, not even a guarantee. So what? Like, that's already happening in Commander a lot. It's just not fun, I guess, to not be able to cast spells. This is another card like Omniscience and Gristlebrand where I'm like, why did they ever make this card? This just, like, your opponents can't cast spells. Why would you ever make a card like that, Wizards of the Coast? I don't get it. This is just a super bad card in general. I totally get why it's banned in the format. At the same time, I would be okay with it being unbanned. My big issue with this card is one of those, and before it got banned, the way I saw it got used in a really malicious way is you're just hating on one person. Like, this guy killed my commander, so I'm going to now I'm going to play Iona, and I'm going to name whatever color he's playing. Just to spite him, just to stick it to him. That's the part I really don't like about this card, is people use it as spite, as vengeance. It's not the best play, but I'm going to name the color that you're playing just to spite you because you did something I didn't like earlier in the game. Unfortunately, that happens all the time. So for that reason, I'm okay with it being banned. Caracas. This is definitely a category 1, and I think we all know why. Don't really need to cover this. This card absolutely, of course, needs to be banned, or it would be the most powerful card in the entire format. Again, another fantastic white card banned in the format, but moving on. Library of Alexandria. This is one of those cards that I did in my 10 cards to unban video. I don't understand why it's banned. It is obviously a card. Again, this is a category 3 for me for sure. I don't know why this is banned. And again, the pushback I get here is people say, oh, well, and of course they run out the scenario that you would do in Legacy or any other format where this card would be really, really good. But in a Commander game, I'm like, okay, so what, right? Turn 1, I play my Library of Alexandria. I have 7 cards in hand, so I can immediately tap at the draw card. Wow, that's great. The only problem is that's your turn 1, right? Your turn 1, you have a land that you're now not tapping for mana. You're tapping it to draw a card. So then your next opponent goes land, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet. Who had the better first turn there? I think the guy with the 4 mana on turn 1 probably had a better turn than you, who just drew a card and then probably discarded to hand size, right? Now, I guess If you're in a deck where you want to be discarding and putting stuff in your graveyard, that seems pretty good. Sure, okay. We're getting into some very specific scenarios here, though. I'm totally okay with this getting unbanned. Totally okay with it. It's really expensive. Okay, so what? So is Tabernacle, right? Tabernacle is super expensive too. It's a land that has an incredibly powerful effect. Again, that's another card that I'm like, I can't believe people don't call for this card to get banned. That's not banned in the format, right? Mishra's Workshop, 3 mana, turn 1, not banned in the format. So Library of Alexandria is way better than both of those cards? I don't think so. Limited Resources. Again, just like with Balance, another card that I'm like, I'm okay with it. Totally okay with it. I get why they banned it. This is a category 2 for sure, where I totally understand why they banned it, because it is kind of a little unfun and it prevents people from playing lands and all that. But the scenario here, listen, if I play this early, okay, so let's say I play this on turn 1, okay, everyone gets to play out a few lands. And again, are you playing removal in your deck? Like, you guys don't have removal? Krosan Grip. On we go, right? All this is going to do is slow down the game a little, which is what white is good at. That's how you make white decks better, right? The other scenario is I play it when everyone's got a lot of lands, and I don't have a problem with that scenario either. When it enters the battlefield, everyone chooses 5 lands they control and sacrifices the rest. You get to keep 5 lands, right? Again, there's already cards that, like Keldon Firebombers, I think you only get to keep 3 lands, right? Oh, also Armageddon, where you get to keep 0 lands, right? That just destroys all the lands. So if your problem is the land destruction part of it, there's already lots of land destruction, so that shouldn't be an issue. If the part of it that you don't like is that your opponent can play it on turn 1, it doesn't really do a whole lot on turn 1. The other issue I've had where people talk about this card is, okay, but then you can ramp a whole bunch and do a whole bunch of things, and then your opponents can't play land. Okay, but now, again, we're doing the whole, I have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops. We're in magical Christmas land here, where a whole bunch of things have to happen perfectly. I have to have this phenomenal opening hand where Limited Resources has to be one of the cards in my opening hand. How many times am I going to mulligan before that happens? Like, how many times is that scenario going to happen, right? The scenario where I turn 1, Soul Ring, maybe, I guess I would need some mana rocks, ramp a whole bunch. So of course I'm in a white-green deck. Then I limited resources, so no one else, like, that is, again, that's the Arayo Soratami Ascendant scenario, where it's this ridiculous Magic Christmas land where, yeah, okay, I've won the game on turn 1 or something. Again, I'm not playing Casual Commander, so I'm not in that scenario either. And also, how often is that going to happen, guys? That is just like 1 in a million. So this is a category 2 for sure, where I would be okay with it being unbanned. And I'm also totally, I get it why it's banned for sure. Lutri the Spell Chaser. Yeah, I think we all know this is a category 1. It absolutely should be banned for obvious reasons. I just had a guy ask me a question about this the other day, about why it's banned. It's banned because it's an absolute auto include. It's just an extra card for everyone who is playing an Izzet deck or any deck with red and blue, whether you would use it or not, whether it's even good in your deck. It's a free 3/2 flash creature that you can just cast it at your leisure whenever it's convenient for you. Rules Committee was bang on they banned this card. For those who don't know, they banned this card before it was even released. As soon as it was spoiled, like the next day, they're like, this card's banned. They nailed it. Absolutely, it should be. All right, the Moxes. And again, I don't want to get too much into this because, again, this video is already going long and there's still a lot of more cards to go. This is a category 2 for me. I get why they're banned. I would be totally okay with them being unbanned. They are mana positive mana rocks. And again, I will look at one of the Moxes is a 0 mana card that is giving me 1 mana. A Soul Ring is a 1 mana card that's giving me 2 mana. Not big difference there, I don't think. Like, those are all the same thing, right? And again, for all the people that are calling for the other mana rocks to get banned, and I might have to make a video specifically about all the mana positive mana rocks. The more I think about this, and again, I just talked about this in that casual video, the more I'm like, man, Soul Ring is just better than all these cards. Soul Ring is better than a Mana Crypt in a casual game, in my opinion. It's better than a Mana Vault as well, right? Mana Vault adds 1 extra mana, but it stays tapped. You have to pay 4 mana to untap it. That slows you down by an entire turn, essentially, on top of the fact that it does you damage. Soul Ring just sits there untapping every single turn, 0 downside, giving you 2 mana. It's an absurdly busted card, but people just don't think of it that way because everyone has one in all their commander decks, right? All the mana positive mana rocks for me are all in the same category. They all fit, okay? The Moxes, Black Lotus, it's all the same to me. What's the difference? It's all just easy free mana. right? I don't understand. Like the other big issue that people have with the Moxes is they're just super expensive. Okay, what about Gaia's Cradle? What about all the other really, people are like, these cards should be banned because they're not accessible. What about Gaia's Cradle? What about any expensive card? Right? Again, Tabernacle or any super expensive card, is that accessible? So, Time Twister. There's like a, $9,000 card, whatever it costs. I don't know. Is that accessible, right? So there's already lots of cards in the format that are not banned that are super expensive and not accessible. So that's not a great argument either, right? For me, the Moxes, I understand why they're banned, but I absolutely would be okay with unbanning them. Panoptic Mirror is 100% a category 3. And again, I'm going to try to move through this quickly. We all know why this is banned, okay? It is banned because of the extra turns, infinite turns scenario, which is insanely difficult, okay? You are going to play this for 5 mana. You have to imprint a card on it by activating the ability, and the ability costs what the card costs. So if I have a Time Warp, I'm going to spend 5. So now I need 10 mana, and then I have to wait till my next upkeep before it even does anything. So again, any removal destroys this scenario pretty quickly. Again, we get into all these scenarios, and I'm sort of just reading the comments ahead of in the future here in my mind, where people will say, oh, well, they have a bunch of free counter spells to protect their combo. And okay, great. You've built your entire deck around Panoptic Mirror, Time Warp. You got a whole bunch of counter spells to protect it. Again, that doesn't sound very casual to me. Number 2, congratulations, you got your incredibly complex combo off. You're incredibly, you have all these hoops you got to jump through. Congratulations, you did it. Great. Scoop up and play another game. If someone got the Panoptic Mirror, Time Warp combo, actually got to their next upkeep, and started taking infinite turns, okay, congratulations, you did it. Way to go. Next game. That's my opinion on it. Moving on, Paradox Engine. And again, people will think I'm being hypocritical here by going in a completely different direction with this. Man, did I love when this card got banned. Again, this was very similar to Golos, where it literally was making the format unfun for me. I was not enjoying playing it. When Kaladesh and Aether Revolt came out, we got a few cards all at once that were just very much built specifically for Commander, first of all, obviously. Paradox Engine was one, Aetherflux Reservoir were the other. And they were both super unfun cards that just usually ended the game as soon as they came out. And I lost. So many games ended. For me, for like about 6 months there, I lost an absolute ton of games to either an Aetherflux Reservoir or a Paradox Engine, and I was just not having fun at all. I was really considering quitting the format, honestly. I'll just say it. Paradox Engine got banned, and I was like, great. At least we got rid of one of those awful cards. Still don't love Aetherflux Reservoir, but I'm okay with it being unbanned. This card is just, again, it's like Fast Bond, in my opinion. It's just, you're just enabling ridiculous things to happen. This is just a combo enabler. You're just enabling people to either combo off or take 20-minute long turns, both of which are not fun at all for anyone else and is not really casual at all. So again, maybe if we separated the formats, this could be legal in CEDH, because obviously CEDH players would be okay with this card. In a casual game, you wouldn't want to ever play this card, because all it's going to do is either enable some infinite combo or allow someone to take a 20-minute long turn. So, which you shouldn't be doing in a casual Commander game, I don't think, right? So, moving on. Oh boy, Prime time. Primeval Titan. Again, just like with Gis Ungiven, this is the card that I got probably most of the pushback on when I talked about unbanning it. I always hear the same phrase from people with this card. It's format warping, right? Everyone, all people care about with Primeval Titan, if this is unbanned, and I promise you, if this card got unbanned, which I think it should, this is a category 3 for me, it would see play for sure. People would put it in their lands deck. I would probably put it in my A Name is One deck, because it enables me to get my Coffers and my Urborg or any of the other really important lands in my deck. That's the only reason why I would play it. Everyone always gives me the same scenario, and the scenario that they're giving me is from like 8 years ago or forever ago, before this card got banned. The format is so different now, guys. Okay, the amount of really quick, easy, instant speed removal, the counter spell, all that stuff that can put a stop to this really, really quickly. I think 90% of the time, when you cast your Primeval Titan, it's going to be 6 mana. I go get 2 lands out of my deck and put them into play. Now, what I hear all the time from people is, okay, but everyone, all people care about is copying the Primeval Titan, or, everything becomes about the Primeval Titan. So even your opponents are just trying to copy it. Your opponents are all playing a clone deck all of a sudden? What? Like, what are you talking about? Like, if I'm playing my name is one deck and someone plays a Primeval Titan, I'm not trying to copy it because I don't have any copy effects in that deck. In fact, I don't have any copy of. I have one deck, my Tishana deck, that copies creatures. So what are you talking about? Everyone's trying to copy it. Everyone's trying to clone it. Like, you mean the people that are playing clone decks? Of course they are. Anyone who's playing a clone or copy deck is going to be trying to clone the best creature on the battlefield. They'll clone an Avacyn or a Vorinclex. That's pretty good too, right? Everyone who's not playing that deck, which is most people who aren't playing, most commander decks, I would say, are not clone decks. Like, clone decks are what, like 5% or something? There's not a lot of decks out there that are doing that. So how are those people cloning or copying the Primeval Titan, right? I hear this weird argument all the time about Primeval Titan. Like, the whole game becomes about Primeval Titan. Every really powerful card, that is the case. If someone casts a Vorinclex, okay, the whole game becomes about Vorinclex. Your opponent is trying to keep it on the table, and everyone else is trying to get it off the table. Literally, when a Vorinclex hits the table, the entire game stops, and the whole entire game becomes about Vorinclex. All 3 of your opponents are trying to get it off the table because they're screwed if they don't. The game is pretty much over if they don't. Same goes for a lot of other cards. What's the difference? I don't get it, right? And again, Primeval Titan is only getting lands. I would say Vorinclex is way better than a Primeval Titan. I would much rather see him a Primeval Titan, right? If you're trying to enable the Dark Depths combo or something, okay. Again, I don't think even the Dark Depths combo, to be quite honest, is not that good in Commander. I've seen it happen a few times, and it's usually path to exile, move on, next, right? Again, it doesn't end games. This is not Legacy, right? A Dark Depths combo never ends a game in a command. I've never seen it end a game. You just have to cast an exile removal spell, right? And even if you don't, they still have to attack a few times before they can kill you. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. This, for me, is a 3. I absolutely would unban this card, and I know I'm going to get a ton of pushback, and I don't care. I think this is a really good card, without question. Is it ban worthy? Does it just ruin games? Does it just end games? No, it absolutely does not. And I know people are going to say, oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about because you weren't back then, like 8-10 years ago. Guys, Dockside Extortionist didn't exist 8 years ago, okay? Smothering Tide didn't exist 8 years ago. Fierce Guardianship didn't exist 8 years ago, right? I mean, this is a lot different of a format than it was 8 years ago or whenever this card got banned. Way different of a format, okay? Just like with Protean Hulk and Kokosho and all these cards that got unbanned, they maybe were format warping at the time, not so much anymore, right? Moving on. Prophet of Kruphix. Second verse, same as the first. I absolutely would unban this card, and it's a great card, no question. People already do this with Seedborn Muse. The only part that makes, by the way, Seedborn Muse untaps everything. Prophet of Kruphix, so it untaps your mana rocks, which is way better, obviously. Prophet of Kruphix only untaps your creatures and lands. Now, of course, you can put mana dorks. There's a lot of great things you can do here. Sure, this is a great card, no question. Seedborn Muse, pretty much the same thing, in my opinion. The difference here, and I know, again, I'm reading the comments in advance here. People say, oh, well, you can cast creatures though they had flash. So you can now, and the argument I always heard about this card is, and I think I started Commander right when this card got banned. The argument I always heard about this card is, well, everyone is just taking that person is taking another turn on everyone else's turns. Really, how are they doing that? They're casting creature spells on your turn? Where are the creatures coming from? They just have an infinite amount of creatures in their hand, so they can cast a bunch of creatures on your turn, cast a bunch of creatures on the next turn, right? Where are all these creatures coming from that they're casting on everyone else's turn, right? Do they have like a Beast Whisperer in play? So now as they cast, they draw. Now we're in a 2-card combo, and all it's doing is enabling them to get a bunch of value, right? Again, let's look at Seedborn Muse and Thrasios. Exact same scenario, right? If anyone's ever played against the Thrasios deck, they get their Seedborn Muse out. All they do is they're playing on everyone else's turn, right? All their stuff untaps on someone else's turn, and then they start using Thrasios once or twice or however many times, and then the next turn, and then, right, that same exact scenario. Same exact scenario. So for me, there's no difference there. Again, if you're making the argument that this card should get banned for that scenario, then I guess we should ban Seedboard Muse or Thrasios or whatever. There's just, for me, there's just a million scenarios where stuff like this is going to happen. And again, this is another card just like Primeval Titan where people go, okay, well, back in the day, it used to be like this and everyone put this in their, okay, this is not back in the day, guys, okay? Things are a lot different now. Moving on. Recurring Nightmare, another card that I would unban for sure. And I totally understand why people want this banned. I guess maybe this is a category 2 then. I get why it's unbanned. I would be totally okay. I get why it's banned. I would be totally okay with unbanning it. It is maybe the best recursion spell ever. You know, 3 mana, have to sacrifice a creature. That's not hard. It play only as a sorcery, but of course, the way the rules work now, and by the way, they've changed the rules. That's why this card is so much better than it used to be, because you can't respond to the activation, right? The activation for this card is sacrificing a creature. Again, we got to look at where the colon is. The activation for this card is I sacrifice a creature and return it to my hand, so a removal spell doesn't work here. That's why this card is banned. The only reason this card is banned is because it is really difficult to get off the table. Sure, I get that part. I get why it's banned. This is a category 2 for me. I would be okay with it being unbanned, though. I suppose your opponent could sort of go off, maybe get into some combo where they're doing a lot of... Okay, again, this is Commander, guys. There's lots of that stuff going on already. Anyway, moving on. Rofellos, Land of War Emissary. This is absolutely, this is a number 3 for me. I would absolutely unban this. I don't really understand why it's banned. This is another one that is sort of a bygone era where back in the day, it was probably super busted. And, you know, these guys were doing these super busted things with their mono green decks. You know, like by today's standards, I don't think that's great. It's 2 mana commander, and it's going to add a green mana to your mana pool for each forest you control. So likely, and again, we can get into the silly scenarios where I'm going to be doing, you know, playing the Moxes and doing all these ridiculous first turn things. Great. Now, again, we're probably in CEDH land here. In a casual commander game, I'm going to play a forest, and I guess I could, well, what are you going to ramp with on turn 1? Probably not much. You're probably turn 2, right? So turn 2, I'm going to play another forest, and I'm going to play my commander, right? So now, on the following turn, I'm on turn 3 now. My commander... If I play another forest, which is likely, I now am tapping my commander for 3 mana. Busted, right? I mean, I don't think that's that good, right? In a normal green deck, rather than playing my commander on turn 1, I can play a Rampant Growth on turn 2. I can play a Rampant Growth on turn 2 and get another land into play. And lands are way better than creatures. Again, land removal is very sparse in commander. Creature removal is everywhere. So a land ramp, as I say all the time, land ramp is always superior to anything else. Superior to creatures, mana dorks, which this is obviously. It's superior to mana dorks. It's superior to mana rocks because you are getting something in play that's probably going to be there for the entire game. So in a mono green deck, I cast my Nature's Lore on turn 2, get a forest into play that's untapped that I can immediately use to cast something else as well. Maybe I can cast a Land of War Elves. And then now, so I'm not like, how is this such a huge advantage over that? There's untappers. Okay. So is there for every other mana dork. There's land untappers. There's all sorts of really busted mana scenarios you can get in. This is a very easy creature to kill. It's a 2/1 with no protection. I can very easily get this off the table if my opponent plays it. I don't even know if I would. If my opponent was playing a Rofellos Land of War Emissary deck, this is not like the Leovold situation where I'm going to have my removal ready to go. I'll probably be like, no biggie. Plays the Rofellos on turn 2. I'll be like, I'll save my mana for, and then what? So I guess turn 3, they have 6 mana. That's really good. Sure. Anyone ever seen a green deck get 6 mana on turn 3 before? I have. I mean, I've seen non-green decks get 6 mana on turn 3. So, again, that just doesn't seem out of the norm in a commander game. I get that this guy's your commander, so you always have access to him, but just doing whatever green deck does anyway, right? I don't think it's any different. I totally think this should get unbanned. Sherazade, yes. Again, this is sort of like the Chaos Orb situation. Obviously, it should be banned. We all know why it should be banned. There's really not anything to discuss here. Moving on. Sway of the Stars is, when they when they unbanned Worldfire, this was one where I'm like, well, how come they didn't unban this? I absolutely would unban this. This is a number 3 for me. Just like with Biorhythm, Worldfire, these all fit into the same category of it's a ridiculously expensive spell that doesn't even end the game. This doesn't. I would rather see my opponent play Sway of the Stars than an Expropriate, probably. Maybe, I guess it depends on the state of the game that you're in. But there's a lot of, it's a 50-50. It's a 50-50 whether or not I would like to see a Sway of the Stars in a Magic game or in a Commander game or an Expropriate. Either or. I mean, each player shuffles their hand and graveyard and permanents they own into their library. They draw 7 cards. Each player's life total becomes 7. I mean, it resets the game. And I think what a lot of people don't like about it is that it's just going to drag the game out. You hear people say that a lot. And again, I'm sure I'm going to see that comment in the comments below about how that card just drags the game out. For me, I'm like, I like playing Magic. So, it's like if I'm in my favorite movie, like if I'm watching, Avengers Endgame or something at the theater, and that movie's like 3 hours long or whatever. At no point was I sitting there during that movie going, boring, when is this over? Okay, come on, I got stuff to do. No, I was there to watch a movie, and I enjoyed it was enjoyable. So the longer it went, I'm cool with that because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. If I'm playing a Magic game and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, why do I care if I drag the game out? You're dragging out more fun. So for me, I'm like, whenever I hear the drag the game out argument, I'm just like, you don't like playing Magic? That's kind of weird. Why are you playing Magic then, right? So, I mean, I guess if you got better things to do, don't sit down and play. My advice to everyone is if you're going to play a Commander Magic game, a casual Commander Magic game, make sure your schedule's open. Don't have like a doctor's appointment in an hour and a half, right? Don't try to get in a quick game, right? Play, if you want to get in a quick game, probably Modern or Legacy or something, right? Commander is meant to be played as a long game. Now, that doesn't mean that every game has to be 3 hours. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here. It doesn't mean every game has to be 3-4 hours. I've played a couple of 4-hour Commander games. And yes, towards the, once you get we're approaching the 4-hour mark, it's like, okay, this is getting a little ridiculous and my butt's getting sore. But at the same time, I enjoy playing Magic, so it's not like someone's, sticking me with a red hot poker or something. I still am enjoying myself. So if someone casts a Sway of the Stars on turn 9 or 10, it's like, that's okay. Likely, though, they have a reason why they're playing it because they do have a game-winning scenario planned out as well, right? Anyway, tangent over, let's move on. Oh, Sundering Titan. Sundering Titan is, as I've mentioned on my channel before, one of my favorite cards ever of all time. I love this card. I've played it in Modern. I had a Modern deck built around Sundering Titan, which, in Modern is an 8-mana creature. Not easy. Obviously, I would blink it over and over. I get what this is a category 2 for me. I understand why it's banned. I totally get it. It is land destruction. It's targeted land destruction, and it's doing it in a very efficient manner. Because it's going after, what makes it so good in a Commander game and why it's banned is because it specifically goes after land types. So if I'm playing a mono white deck, let's say, and all my opponents are playing all the other colors, I can not hit my own lands. I can hit, I'll hit my other opponent's plains and then a mountain and then an island, and I can really go to town nitpicking all the lands that I'm destroying. Also, it is a enter and leave the battlefield trigger, which is one of the reasons why I love it. I love creatures with enter and leave the battlefield triggers. You don't see that very often. So if I blink it, I get double, right? If I blink my Sundering Titan, I get the enter and the leave. I mean, I would get the leave first and then the enter. So I get to destroy 5 lands for each, right? So I get to destroy 10 lands total. That's a lot of lands. Again, if your argument is, I don't like land destruction, there's tons of that in the format already. The fact that it's stapled on a creature and you can blink it and stuff does absolutely make it a lot better. I still would be totally okay with it being unbanned. Totally okay. I love this card. Moving on. Sylvan Primordial. And this is one... I know people are going to say I'm maybe a bit of a hypocrite because I think this should get banned, and Primeval Titan, they might make some comparisons about how it's just a really good creature. What's the big deal? This is like, I think, absurd in a. I mean, all the primordial series are all good in the Commander format, and they pretty much all get used, some more than others. This is just stupid. Like the amount of value you get from it. I mean, it enters the battlefield for each opponent. You get to destroy a non-creature permanent that player controls. That on its own makes this card super, super good. 7 mana to destroy a non-creature permanent from each of your opponents is already totally worth it. And then you get a 6/8 body with reach on top of that. But also, for each permanent destroyed this way, you get to search your library for a forest card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. What were they thinking with this? Again, this is another card where I'm like, what were they thinking with this? If you look at any other effect, like a Terastodon, right? A Terastodon comes into play, destroys 3 non-creature permanents, but your opponents get the replacement. They get the token, right? Shouldn't that be the case here? Shouldn't it be the case that your opponents whose stuff you're like, that's what all those green effects like Beast Within, that's what they do. The person whose thing you're destroying, they get the whatever the benefit is. Here though, they went all in on not only do you get to destroy a permanent, but also you get to search for 3 lands, 3 forest cards, which means you can get triomes and put them directly onto the battlefield. What? I don't know what they were thinking with this card. Again, in a 2-player format, I guess it's not that good. It's just okay, but this is another one where, like, as soon as you see it, you're like, yeah, I mean, this just has to be banned, right? It's just stupid good. Again, for me, everyone goes nuts about Primeval Titan. Sylvan Primordial, I think, is way better than Primeval Titan in a Commander game. I mean, talk about cloning and blinking this guy. Game over, right? It's just brutal, ridiculous. All right, moving on. Time Vault. Again, this is a number 1 category where obviously this, again, I think this is banned in everything. It might be restricted in Vintage maybe, but I think we get this one. Time Walk. Time Walk is, for me, a category 2. Again, another hot take. Just like with Ancestral Recall, it is absurdly powerful. It's in the power 9, obviously. In the history of the game, it's one of the most powerful cards. All that's good stuff. Yeah. All you're doing, though, is taking an extra turn. There is already 1,000 extra turn spells in the format. We already have a bunch of those. So there's nothing new happening here. The only difference is that it's a little bit cheaper. That's the only difference. The only difference is my opponent can cast a Time Walk on turn 2. Doing an extra turn early in the game there's not a lot of advantage to that, because what are you going to do with it, right? Time Walk on turn 2, or let's even say you can pull it off on a turn 1, right? Turn 1, I Time Walk. What's going to happen? I draw a card, so I get an extra card draw, which is just replacing the Time Walk I just cast, by the way. So I have the same amount of cards in hand, and then I get to make an extra land drop, probably. Maybe if I happen to have a really good hand, maybe I can cast another spell as well if it's really cheap. Again, in the CEDH scenario where I have all these mana rocks, I can really go off, but I'm not talking about CEDH here, right? In a normal casual Commander game, my opponent's going to cast a Time Walk on turn 2. They're going to draw a card. So again, just replacing the card they just cast, and then probably play a land and pass turn. That's it. That's all they're going to do. It's essentially a growth spiral, right? That's it. Extra turn spells are way, way better later in the game when you have your setup. You have your commander out. You have a bunch of lands. You can untap on that extra turn and really go to town, right? That's where extra turns are really good in Commander. So the fact that it costs only 2 mana is like, okay, why does that matter, right? I mean, it's better. Obviously, casting a 2 mana spell is way better than casting a 5 mana spell, but the effect is the same. So I'm still getting an extra turn, right? Again, I would rather see a Time Walk in a Commander game than a Time Stretch. I mean, raise your hand if you agree. How many people would rather see a Time Walk in a Commander game than a Time Stretch or an Expropriate? I would rather see a Time Walk. That's just me. Again, we have the situation of it's super expensive, all that. I've already covered all that, right? Moving on. Tinker. This falls into the same category of why did they ever print this card? This is one of the most absurdly busted cards ever printed. It was banned pretty quickly after it was released. I was playing Standard at the time. And of course, people were, one of the things that people were doing in Standard was sacrificing their Mox Diamond and going and get a Phyrexian Colossus turn 1, which pretty much was, game over on turn 1. So obviously this card got banned almost immediately. Again, I think it's banned in pretty much everything. Again, I get in the situation where people think about the Power 9 cards like Ancestral Recall and Time Walk. Casting an Ancestral Recall or a Time Walk on turn 1 is not going to end the game. It's good, it's okay, but it's not going to end the game, right? Or turn 2 or whatever. Casting a Tinker on turn 1 will actually end the game, okay? If I play my Mana Crypt, tap it, and tap my 1 island I just played on turn 1, sacrifice my Mana Crypt and put a Blightsteel Colossus in play, the game might just be over there, right? So in a casual Commander game, in my opinion, a Tinker is way better than a Time Walker and Ancestral Recall. I know that's a hot take, and people think that's crazy to say, but it is. I just played out a very likely scenario that a Tinker will just end the game on turn 1. So there is very few cards on this list that are a more obvious ban than Tinker, in my opinion. You know, Fast Bond, like there's a couple that are just like, of course they're banned. They have to be. The format would just be not very fun otherwise. Even if we don't play out that scenario, just I Tinker on turn 5 and go get my Blightsteel Colossus is stupid and ridiculous, and right? It just enables, it's just, again, just like with Fast Bond and some of these other cards, it is just way too easy to enable the I win scenario. That's the way I look at it. Moving on. Tolarian Academy. I am in the camp of, this is a number 2 for me. I would be okay with unbanning it. I realize that it is absolutely absurd in a lot of decks. Gaia's Cradle is absurd in a lot of decks, right? So I am in the camp of all the people that say, why ban Tolarian Academy if you're going to ban Gaia's Cradle, or not ban it, and vice versa. Tolarian Academy, Gaia's Cradle in a Commander game, right? In other formats, big difference, but in Commander, pretty much the same, right? It's pretty easy to fill your board full of creatures and have your Gaia's Cradle tap for 12 or 15 mana or whatever, just like it is with a Tolarian Academy. To me, they're in a Commander game, they're basically the same. And again, put Ghost Quarter in your deck, right? Or Wasteland. You gotta have targeted land hate in your deck. You have to. Yeah, this is a category 2 for me. I get why it's banned. And if they ban Gaia's Cradle, I would be okay with that. I get it. I understand why you're banning that. But I'm okay with Gaia's Cradle being unbanned, and I would be totally okay if they unban Tolarian Academy. That's just me. Next up, we're almost there. Trade Secrets. Again, this is another card that I think we all understand why it's banned. Target opponent draws 2 cards, then you drop to 4 cards, right? In a 4-player format, this just doesn't work. And it's funny that they reprinted this in a I think the very first Commander set, they reprinted this card because they thought, hey, this will be fun. No. Sorry, Wizards of the Coast. Not fun. You enable, again, really dumb scenarios where 2 people get to draw their whole decks and the other 2 people are just sitting there and don't really get to play the game. It just makes the game super unfun. I told this, of course, this should be banned, I think. Upheaval, yeah, I get, this is a number 2 for me where I get it. I get why it's banned. It's just super unfun. This fits into the same category as Sway of the Stars or Worldfire, which they unbanned, or a lot of cards where it's just not fun. Returning all permanents to owner's hands. You can get into a scenario like 6 mana is not a lot, right? It's not like Sway the Stars that cost 10. You can get into some scenarios where you can maybe win the game with this, I guess. You know, okay. But mostly, I think this is going to just turn the game into everyone just picks everything up, and then they have to like discard the hand size, and it's not super fun. I get it. I understand why this is banned. If they unbanned it, oh man, I really wouldn't want to see. Yeah, this is super unfun in a Commander game, right? Really unfun. It's symmetrical. It puts everyone in the same position. Like, I'm thinking if you don't have the win scenario and you're just playing this just like as a, I'm way behind on board and everyone else is way ahead and I'm just resetting things, it is pretty unfun. Yeah, and maybe I'm contradicting myself here a little because it is going to drag the game out. I don't know. I'm looking at this card and I'm thinking I would much rather see Sway of the Stars than Upheaval. And also this costs way less, so it's a lot easier to cast. I totally get why it's banned, for sure. I think if they unbanned it, I wouldn't really care, though. I don't know. How many people would play this card if it got unbanned? I don't know. It's a weird one. All right, last card we finally got there. Yawgmoth's Bargain. 4 black enchantment. Skip your draw step, pay 1 life, draw a card. So this card is... obviously the comparison here is Necropotence, which is very similar. I could easily make the argument, and a lot of people could, that Necropotence is better just because it's cheaper and you can get it out a lot quicker. The big difference here is that obviously you get the cards right away. So it's similar to Gristlebrand in that way. With Necropotence, you have to wait till your end step, so you can't like go off immediately, right? So it's not, Necropotence isn't as good as enabling the go off strategy, whereas Yawgmoth's Bargain is, because you can just continue to fill your hand, gain some life, fill your hand. Like, I guess the comparison to Gristlebrand is fair because it is essentially the same thing. It's doing the same thing. Instead of just draw 7 cards or pay 7 life, draw 7 cards, you're just paying 1 life, draw. So you're doing the exact same thing. You're just doing it in an even better way because you can pay exactly the amount of life you want. So I get why this is banned. Yeah, I guess in order to not be hypocritical, I would have to say that this is probably a good thing this is banned, because it is, again, one of those just combo enabling, end game scenario enabling cards like Paradox Engine, where it's going to hit the table and you're probably just going to win the game right away or very quickly. So, and I don't love cards like that, so I definitely, probably it should be banned. All right, that is it. That is all. Obviously a very long video, but again, I thought, I've been thinking of doing this video for a while, for a few months now, and I kept pushing it back because I knew it was going to be a really long video and it's going to take a lot of work. And I was like, hey, my 2nd anniversary is approaching. That seems like a perfect time to do this. And so I was like, all right, I will. And I know I'm going to get a ton of comments and I'm going to have a lot of people pushing back. I'm probably not going to respond to a lot of people because what ends up happening a lot of times in these banned videos is I end up getting into the literal exact same conversation that I did in the video. I covered all my viewpoints in the video. So when someone says, oh, well, you can't unban gifts ungiven because then people just enable their combos. Well, I covered that in the video. I already talked about why that shouldn't be an issue. So, give your opinions. Absolutely, I want lots of opinions. I know there will be. Whenever I make a video about banning or unbanning cards, I get lots of pushback, obviously. I mean, everybody does. It's a controversial topic. People get really fired up about certain cards getting banned or unbanned. This is just my personal opinion, guys. As I've stated on my channel before, I am not the grand overlord of EDH. I do not dictate the rules. I'm not on the rules committee. They don't even know who I am. I'm just some guy with a channel who gives my opinion on stuff. And here I am giving my opinion on the banned cards in the format. And, as maybe you could go up and tally, and maybe I'll put a tally of all the 1s, 2s, and 3s. Obviously, if it was up to me, there would be a lot less cards unbanned in the format than banned. Again, cards that I would ban right now that aren't banned, I can't think of any that I absolutely want banned. There's definitely a few that if they banned it, I would be okay with it. Again, I'm so on both sides of the fence here because there's almost no cards that I would be upset if they banned, except for maybe some of the commanders that I play. And if they unban cards, same thing. I wouldn't be upset either way about it, banning or unbanning cards, right? At the end of the day, and I know there's a lot of people out there that they have to play against some of these really powerful cards all the time, like Dockside Extortionist that they want banned and their buddies comboing off in their play group all the time. Are you guys playing casual commander? At the end of the day, we really have to come back to that, right? Unbanning these cards as well. If we're playing casual commander, then you shouldn't be, right? There should be a different scenario here where you're not going off, right? So if you are the one calling for Dockside Extortionist to get banned or calling for Necropotence to get banned or Gaia's Cradle, is the guy you're playing against, and I understand why you're upset and you want that card banned, but is the guy you're playing against even playing a casual deck? He might not be, right? So maybe you should have a conversation about that. Another thing to take into consideration, because a lot of these cards like Primeval Titan and Kruphix, Prophet of Kruphix, are cards that have been banned for a long, long time. The format has changed, guys. Keep that in mind. Format has changed a lot. We got a lot more really powerful cards, a lot more enablers, allowing things to happen a lot more easily, like Dockside Extortionist and whatnot. Keep that in mind as well. I don't think Primeval Titan is a format warping card anymore. Maybe it used to be. I don't think it is anymore. But let me know in the comments below how you guys feel all about this. I am going to give a shout out to all my patrons. They have helped support the channel for the last 2 years. Shout out to all my viewers as well. You guys are great. I have had tons of fun doing this channel for the last 2 years. Obviously, it has become a lot more popular than I thought it would ever actually become, which is fantastic. I enjoy doing it, and I will continue to do it for hopefully a while yet. If you're interested in further supporting the channel, I do have a Patreon. The link is in the description below. Feel free to give it a click. I don't ask much from my viewers, right? I don't sit here like pushing products on you guys and stuff like that. Just, I have a Patreon, that's it. I guess I also have a TCG player link. If you plan on buying cards, you can use that. That's about it. That's all I ask. Not much. So feel free to come join me on my Patreon. We're doing lots of fun stuff over there. But that is it for today. Thanks for tuning in.